So I was gonna start with a joke, with a vegetable joke, um, but it's a bit corny, so I won't.
Ah,
That might be the seed for the conversation. It introduces a number of kind of themes that I'm hoping that we get into. I'm gonna do my best here in the beginning to kind of lay out the territory, the terrain, at least as far as I see it. Roughly, we're thinking mystery school or secret pedagogy or pedagogy through secrets. Okay, so we have this lovely shorthand of overview and single pointedness. And then last week we got into a bit the myth of the first patriarch, or this kind of ticklish or humorous or sad or scary understanding that the the patriarch was wanted by the matriarch. So there's this sense in which all the affordances that are given within the overview that can be chosen are given by that overview. And so even the that rebellion, that male rebellion, is one in which um, the very possibility for it or the potential for that has been given or granted. Swami, you still with me? Cool. So we can kind of complexify that a little bit by noticing that the in the language of the myth, the mate. You with me?
I am, but only just
Sure.
again. You disappeared, Zoom kind of relaunched, and your screen is now black. So I'm not quite sure what's on there.
Yeah, it's tricky naming things like trickiness. Um, yeah, it's opening up a certain play. So I think the um okay, so that basic structure, but then also noticing that the overview or the matriarch benefits from that single pointed linearity in terms of the certain discoveries that can be made when that is given uh, priority or the emphasis. So this complexifies the dynamic. It's that um, that single pointedness can penetrate into new possibilities that an overview can then fill. So it's not looking so much like a static map, but within the field set up by the overview, the and I take this to be like tantric grammar or logic. There's penetration, and then there's the possibility for an immersion into a new quality, and then so on and
Ah,
so on. Yeah.
right. Let me try an even a simpler analogy. One South Africans of my generation, anyway, know well is the linear is the soldier, or in modern languages, the operator, and the overview is the general. And if you think of what a soldier has to manage, okay, kill, rape, destroy those things in that order, off you go, yay, and off we go. But the general, he doesn't have, he can't just enjoy that sort of rugby moment feeling. He doesn't even get it. He's got to hassle over which units have got kids of important politicians in. Shit, let's just do a little shuffle and arrangement for that. And how's the catering? How's the supplies of bullets? How's the industrial base behind what we're doing here? How long could we endure this or that? And so on. You can see it's a far more complex task. And it's, how to say, in terms of our own individuality, It's something that calls on our feminine side, our overview side, to gauge that and process that complexity, to come out to linear decisions of, okay, that unit needs to go there, that unit needs to go there, and those guys need to go for a break and a bit of R&R. But overview informs that. And this is why you look back at the history of warfare and military commanders, and the thing that will stand out is most of them are terrible at it. You can see the male mind gets flustered about something that locks him onto a linearity, and he ignores 10 important things. And that's often been the story of warfare. And when it was, not Patton, I forget who it was, the American general that was sent to England to manage the D-Day invasions and stuff. I hear a story that when he arrived there, they said to him, look, we've got, plenty of men for the attack, but we've got one little problem. In our military, a soldier can demand an active posting. Nobody has to be stuck behind a desk if he doesn't want it. And so we got no staff for you. And he just replied, well, you have housewives? They said, sure, we have housewives. He said, no problem. Bring housewives. And his whole command room and whole operations ran very smoothly. And that operation, biggest military operation ever on the planet, as far as we recall. And it all went rather well, but it was managed all the way by women. That's not specific about the gender thing. A male can have excellent overview. Give him enough time at that job and he'll start looking like a big pregnant woman, like, Winston Churchill or even Napoleon. The body will even adjust and feminize if the mind is being used that way.
Sure.
Predominantly. We see it a lot of, women in business that look really lean and mean and hard and cut, and they're absolutely in their masculine, using their masculine mind. It affects the body, the hormone system, everything. And of course, in the individual level and the social level, the question is, what's the right relating? What's the comfortable? Where can there be friendliness? And my suggestion is always, well, the overview is suited to holding the overview, and the linearity is suited to doing the linear things. Seems to be the way it's designed. Let's roll with that.
I think,
no matter how much we feel of the other, we've got both. Some of us have a pretty shabby overview, but then we know, let's ask someone for a view. Let's check with the boss if we really should do this, etc. That's the appeal to overview. And of course, it's only in the male linear thinking that there's some notion of a superiority, inferiority there, because the one commands the other. That's not superiority, inferiority. It's just a fit of function, is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah. I think a possible direction we could take would be like how that is educated, because that brings the school question into it, or the so in the linearity with this like mechanized engineering like training, simple task to do, fit these pieces together, boom boom boom, repeat. That's kind of reflected in our institutional structures and in the educational frames and in how we go about education. And then the overview finds its place. Well, it's not clear how it gets cultivated in a culture that predominates in this way.
No,
so
it's not.
Say again?
It's not. It's not. Hence, it's severely lacking. If you look at political, politics on a short term, on a long term, the management of a nation's reputation, things like that, very few countries show any quality of overview. One country that does a little here and there is more when you get east. Japan, for example. Japan, from the management to the overview side, they, for example, they understand that if you are jailing a really large proportion of your population, and your criminal injustice system has to constantly be on the alert and round the buggers up and imprison them. That, if you allow overview, that makes you look really terrible to other countries. That sort of announces to the world that we've got a real criminal population. Our average citizen is a dog. I mean, if you look at the public message America inadvertently sends to the world by imprisoning more of its population than anyone else,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going there, you've got to be nervous. Are you going to visit the most criminal place on the planet? Are you? You know? Or the most persecuted place? Let's assume the people aren't bad, but then, wow, the government imprisons more people than Mao, Stalin, and Pol Pot combined. What the hell's going on? But the Americans have more linearity, pretty much zero sense of overview. How can you if you're changing your head man every 4 years? You
Mm,
know,
mm,
or every 4 years, you supposedly got a whole new government. That obviously gives a hint it can't really work like that. That's for the show. But you look at the Japanese context, you look at their crime stats, and you'll say, wow, wow, either this government never prosecutes anyone, or there's just no criminals, man. Everyone behaves themselves immaculately. And that's a powerful thing to say about your nation to the world.
mm, mm,
And it's not true. There's statistical wiggles behind it. What Japan cleverly does is it realizes it's got the modern state of Japan, but then it also has the older, more tribal, more honor bound systems that used to be the samurai. And so crimes of them, crimes of the samurai family that have become the underworld and the crime world, the Yakuza, that's not reported like as this in the stats of the modern Japan. It's irrelevant to it.
mm.
So that doesn't make it into any official crime statistics. It's just gone. So there's a bit of a flim-flam, but it's not about the flim-flam or the honesty of it. It's about look at what overview chooses. In the American scenario, there's no overview. There's no overview to even care. How are we making our people look by the way we treat them? How are we making our country look by the things the world gets to hear about us? There's no
Mm.
concern for that. There's just let's have a powerful enough man in to say, "Hey, this is America. Do it our way, bitch." That's pure linearity all the way. Whereas the Japanese, there's more, there's some depth and subtlety to what's going on. What you see from them, you should apply your overview to it and look and see, really, do we actually have no criminals? Really? And so on. Um, and as I said, it isn't trained in the world. It isn't. I mean, our whole schooling system is absolutely based on linear command structure,
Yeah,
all the way.
yeah.
I mean, the most important things they teach in school is to stand in rows, tallest to shortest, hide under desks when you're told to be scared, and that's about it. Obey orders reflexively against your own logic, against your own feeling. Just obey.
Mm,
That's the system. I mean, it wasn't ever created to make people clever. It was created to make better soldiers, because countries kept on finding that people got their own ideas in the middle of a war. Oh, I think I'd like to go visit my wife and sort out the farm a bit. And so they just leave. But how to get people to not do that? And then if you look at the old statistics of war, even in the age of guns, right up to and including Vietnam, I think it's something like 80% don't shoot when they're told to shoot at the enemy. The 20% that do shoot in the general direction, into the ground, into the air. They're not killers. They don't want to kill anyone. And
yeah.
2% shoot that guy, that guy, that guy. And those 2%, half of them are psychopaths and half of them are doing it for love, basically. But you look at schooling and look at the modern training of military and the very reflexive stuff and the paintball games they play and so on and so on. Then look at the psychological problems that come from all these guys who go into action, kill people, and then realize they do it purely from their linear training. And then they realize in the shock and horror, oh my God, I've just murdered a bunch of people. And the psychological problems are therefore much greater, because you've got people who are natural killers doing the killing.
People who are natural killers doing the killing. Yeah.
Who are not natural killers. Yeah, they're doing the killing. You know, if you're the Victoria Cross kind of winner, you're killing for love. You're killing because you were an older, responsible sibling, typically, and you feel your troops as your family or your kids, and there's a machine gun chewing them up. Yeah, you'll crawl through the bush and go shove a hand grenade up their ass. You'll do it. You'll kill it's for love, essentially. And if you're a psychopath, you'll enjoy, oh, I get to kill. Yay. And you go do your murder. But if you're not one of those guys, and now you've thrown a hand grenade into a school bus and like wiped the whole thing out, or shot a rocket grenade into a kindergarten or something, I mean, you're going to feel bad. You're
Yeah.
going to need heavy therapy.
What? How? So I think let's go into this question of how you create that context in which implicit learning can happen. So even as I say that, I can recognize like a certain linearity in that, trying to approach it directly, like trying to like thinking about it in terms of design or in terms of that like mechanism. But it's still a problem that poses itself, like thinking through the uh, the implicit place, so that learning is afforded. And I think you're a good person to ask in the context of mystery school and in the context of your name. And it's the yeah, and the are you interested in going in that direction?
Sure. I mean, uh, I teach overview, and I've had to develop what I would hopefully I'd like to claim is a not too shabby overview myself,
Yeah,
because if you teach a thing, it's best to get some aptitude in it yourself. But nonetheless, even though I claim the integration of my masculine feminine, it's a male body. It prefers to do things in male ways. I'm generally far happier doing one linear focused thing. I'm happier with I'm
yeah,
happier welding than having a meeting with the faculty of the school. But I do both, and I'm not. I hope I'm competent a little bit in both areas, but different skills, different times. I mean, often the
yeah,
way I'm encouraging the women to overview is I do it in a male linear way. I will give them extreme data points to just shake up their linearity and the sort of the linear framing of thinking. I mean, one little example, like in linear thinking, we divide things into categories. It simplifies the story massively for us, and we get to handle the world in terms of those categories, much simpler than handling it in terms of the individual actual things going on and
yeah,
what truly applies to it. It's complicated.
yeah.
Uh, and just as data points to shake up that linearity and that thing of putting things in boxes.
Mm,
Two examples I like is, horses in history, and who knows? I don't know. Some maybe nowadays, maybe some Lipizzanas and war horses are still trained this way. Horses, certain tribes of warriors used to train their horses, and not really train, more like allow their horses to eat meat. Sometimes specifically the corpses on the battlefield after the battle.
yeah,
That's something no horsey owner wants to know, and we think of horses as vegetarian. But no, just as a data point, no. Under some circumstances, horses are happy to eat meat, makes them
yeah,
strong. Warriors used to like horses that ate meat. It happens. Sheep too. Sheep are completely vegetarian. You don't get a more archetypally vegetarian creature. But
mm,
sheep on certain little islands somewhere up near England happen to have no calcium in the ground. So there's really bugger all calcium in what they're eating. And they need calcium to grow their bones. So what do? And to grow their young, to produce the skeletons for their babies. So what do? They go to the birds' nests where Arctic terns, those sort of miniature seagulls,
Mm.
have nests. And apparently it's quite a macabre sight. You can go for a walk around there and come across all these nests where all the baby birds have had their heads off and their legs off, because those are the high calcium bits. And the sheep would know their taste guides them to eat that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just give those kind of data points as a hint, because you can see, just knowing that, it shakes up your certainty about a category like vegetarian. It shakes up your certainty around, what would be a threat to birds, for example. Now, these may be completely irrelevant to you, but having data points like that, knowing that almost every linear category, no matter what, has an exception, has exceptions.
Mm.
So it's how to say, if you're rigid in your linearity, you'll never find overview.
Yeah.
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 But just
Yeah.
to take that up. Yeah.
With your with the it's a funny thought, the new threat to birds is the sheep. Yeah.
Oh, careful, watch out, here come the sheep. Lock up your chickens.
I wonder how long it would take to become like encoded in a evolutionary way, I guess. Like a
Well, but there
the
again, also the hints of the overview is where nature operates. Look at it. In
ah
terms of male thinking about it, sheep on an island where there's insufficient calcium for them, simple enough, they should just die. Obviously, you shouldn't try and farm sheep there. Duh.
yeah,
But a sheep has enough complexity in its system for its taste buds and its urge to arise to go and eat those baby birds in the nest.
yeah, wow,
You
yeah.
know, basically the sheep, and the sheep go crunch them up. Now, think of yourself. You're in a world, it's got, we've got all the toxins of the environment, all the juicy things of the environment. Right. Now, okay, advertising and la pressures us, but if you escape that and you go, okay, what am I wanting to eat today? What suits? And your body even has a level of it, of your tastes will guide you to the right thing.
Mm,
I mean,
mm,
one fellow around the school, um, very strong on his dietary kind of attitudes, very woke, yeah, poisonous, oh, terrible sugar. And then he'd see me having a Red Bull or a Coke or something after a session. And I say, yeah, but depletion. My body screams for that sugar when I've drained those physical energies. It wants the sugar. And sugar's maybe arguably the brain's favorite or second favorite food. Like I feel a craving for it. I'm not going to resist it. He thinks, oh, you're being indulgent, a bit of a Red Bull or a Coke. And then some months ago, I remember he told me, he said, I get it.
ah,
He had 3 sessions in a row, very exhausting. And afterwards, he had an undeniable craving specifically for Coca-Cola, max sugar. And for once in his life, he went, well, never mind my 1 point of judgment. The body really clearly wants it. Let me have one. And he
mm.
thought, wow, the body loved it. It sucked it in. It rushed it through the blood. And oh, I feel so recovered. There's no, I mean, overview has to discard half of common knowledge and half of certainty, because on the male side, we love having a simple understanding of a thing. Ah, sheep's a vegetarian, so's a horse, you know, a nice simple understanding by which we can juggle some symbols and think we know what we're doing. That's the masculine substitute for overview.
Mm,
And but the other side of brain is there. It's just not used that much.
mm,
The best research I've seen around this topic was some team there wired up chickens so that they could tell which parts of the chicken brain was pinging, depending its activity, which parts are in action. And overview is held on the right-hand side of the brain typically, and um, linearity on the left. And what they see with the chicken, there's the chicken doing what chickens do. It's sorting out from what's on the ground, what's a good bug to eat, what's a good stone to eat, what's a thing to avoid. And it's quite complex. Linearity can be very complex, and it's picking away, getting its food, getting its food. But then the gate opens. The farmer's wife approaches with more grain, or the cat comes by, something, and the right hand side of brain fires up. And if it fires up enough, the chicken stops eating, runs away from the cat, or stops eating here, runs over to farmer's wife because there's going to be much richer food there. That's the crudest way, in a way, the simplest way of indicating this natural function. You have to have the brain that focuses into the task, the important thing now, and gets on with it. You
Mm.
have to have the other part of the brain surveying the surroundings, the vibe of things, you know, and then you have to have a nice balance between them. I mean, if a chicken got it wrong, if a chicken got a misbalance going between its overview and its linearity, then it's going to be running like a chicken every time someone comes near the gate. Never mind if they open it. And it's going to die of starvation.
Yeah.
But us humans, we manage to get away with getting it away wrong, and yet we still muddle by a lot.
Yeah.
But you can see the importance. You have to have both as an individual, but also as any organization, society, culture, country, at any
Mm.
level. Both of you applies, and linearity needs to serve it,
Yeah.
and that fit, you know.
Let me add some material here. That's that's I've been thinking overview in terms of, I think it fits quite good in terms of that relational context. Or
Hmm.
so then the you have something like a psychotherapy or psychoanalysis, and you have this it's intended to be a unique relationship for the person coming into the therapy. The therapist is going to give that to them. And now there's different schools as to how that relationship should work or whatever. The kind of shorthand, the way that I understand it, there's a kind of direction that the therapist wants to go, and that's a they like negating themselves. So the context might come with a whole bunch of stuff, and then in the process of therapy, there might be projection into like a father relationship, mother relationship, and the therapist is slowly unraveling that, and so kind of receding, and then in the end, if therapists are honest enough to aim for that end, that context wants to completely negate itself. The therapy wants to end. It has a goal or an end to it. Um, so that's kind of one example of a relational context. Then we had last week this introduction of the theme of teacher-student form taking that form of friendship as being the most uh, appropriate to teaching in our time, it seems. Um, then, if I imagine into a this is all coming in the context, like the overview is thinking uh the is thinking the container, or thinking the context that affords implicit learning. So then in the tantric context, I think a reason there's this cultural pickup of there not being the exclusion of the possibility of sex within that context. And so then it can be had it can be it can become dominated by that sense that it's about sex. Then there's a bunch to work through there.
Oh, sure. Oh, yes. I mean, from people looking at and what
Yeah.
Tantric has put out, yeah, people tend to look, oh, you guys do sex. Oh, okay.
Or
That's
it's a,
easy. You're in the box.
it's like um there's this it's in that in that context of the the gesture of inclusion or an allowance. And so when this a repressed culture meets a tradition or an enactment like that, everything that is repressed in that culture, these people are saying this is a space of inclusion and allowance, and so then the shadow can get projected quite easily onto what's happening there and what that is about. Um,
Yeah. In your therapy example,
yeah.
a lot of therapy, derived from Freud, uh, derived from Jung. Jung was better. Jung had a quality of overview. If you read his works, if you look at his stuff, his mind was wide ranging, many an interest, many a thing he'd refer to in supporting an argument, and so on. Whereas Freud, you read his notes, well, I was giving a lecture, he says, and I gave an exceedingly good lecture, probably largely on account of the amount of cocaine I consumed just before it. I was explaining complicated stuff, obviously way beyond the audience, but I gave them the impression, the important thing was, of course, to give them the impression that I know what I'm talking about.
So
And if you think of lecturers at universities or schools, so many lecture in the Freud mode, you know.
I think I have a question there. So so if Jung is at like a I've heard this shorthand of the two and the difference. He's at a cultural level, or he's like his brilliance is in the analysis of the collective unconscious. So it's he's working, he's analyzing at that level, and so it has that applicability. Freud is coming into a very into like a person or uh one to one, like the person and their unconscious. So then the question I
Right.
think would be would because also earlier when you brought in the military example, like the war, and
Hmm.
the question has to do with how much is the cultural understanding, a sense of world history, a sense of the movements in world history, or a sense of myth. How much how much is that overview, and how much isn't it?
Yeah. So, some when thinking of it linearly, in a linear way, um, you get things like, the country remembering which part of our population goes to another country to get into the war against us. And those are our traitors. So then the next war, we're going to kick them out of the country. Or, um, that's basically what happened to Germany in the First World War. They had the war won, but then a part of their population went and organized some people to come help out and beat them. And that led to, you get then that kind of thing just based on a resentment. And what are people after? They're after revenge, or they're after there's a linearity to it. Now, it's not like the feminine side doesn't have vengeance, but there it's overview. It's like we might have had trade agreements and good business with those people for 100 years, but you know what happened 100 years ago? And if that weighs heavily in the overview, they're still our enemies. They're still our enemies. You don't lose track of that. Um, in fact, that's like the dark side of overview in the feminine is maybe, one of the skills of overview is loading up what's important to the situation.
Mm, mm.
Um, when women learn this stuff from me, like at the point I know that their feminine mind is awakened, it's coming along. Well, that's the point at which this is it steps and processes doesn't look pretty all the way along. So that step, a woman, particularly a woman, but as guys we do it too. But as I say, it's just less. It's less of a thing for us typically. I mean, It's a rare man that has overview in the category that can stand up against the better woman. You know, a bit like it's a rare woman that has tennis to the extent she can stand up against the better man. There's overlap, but the differences are as big as the differences in tennis. But anyway, so when coming into the overview, first real stage of what has to happen there is never mind command, never mind coming to choices in the overview, just expanding out the overview. Just every action, what are its consequences and what context is it in? And expanding that out. And of course, then expanding it out to the ultimate of everything. If you go into expansion, as far as expansion goes, wow, it's way too big an overview. And the stage, the little phrase I've come to describe it by is when I'm talking to a woman around this, I'll say, have you been spending a lot of time in bed until 11 o'clock in the morning, eating chocolate, drinking red wine, and absolutely unmotivated to move out of the bedroom or to engage with anything because you realize that all actions, every linearity you may come up with, ultimately, in the full expansion of it, ends up in basically the heat death of the universe. And you could say a woman in such a condition, I mean, there are therapists who take a view, my God, that's pathological. Whoa, that's dysfunctional. No, no, it's an essential step. They have to have that period of red wine and chocolate 11 o'clock in bed. You know, there's my male mind's focused definition of it. Because when they have expanded to that, then, and only then, only when they have expanded to that extent that they realize the intrinsic meaninglessness of it all, then, okay, when you're, let's consider the next level of direction I give them when they're ready, because it's not going to work a second before, is okay, well, let's consider a thing like, never mind the everything and how it goes in eternity. What about your lifetime? Let's see if we can get it down to this year, what you might want to do this year. And then what's relevant? Yes, out to the heat death of the universe is not relevant. Come in a lot from that. Come into things that are just your lifetime or just the next couple of centuries after you. Limit it. And then within that context, what's relevant? What should be included for the overview of this? That, you see, I mean, to go absolute with overview is just as dysfunctional as going absolute with linearity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, absoluteness with overview, well, the general ennui of the totality of existence doing its big cycle. Great, great, great. That doesn't tell you shit about what you're going to do this afternoon. You know, that can't inform the present.
Yeah.
But bring it down to, okay, let me look at my finances. Then what's relevant? There's quite a bit that's relevant to finances. It can be quite a wide-ranging thing, but what's relevant to it? Load up that data, make the call. And where I say men can be good at this, but good in the way that, you know, Serena Williams can be good at tennis. Men can be good to the point they can most women at it, but the ones who are top of the game, no, they've got overview worth respecting. You know, they have a different quality of it when they get it right. One of the limits on the masculine brain, which is predominantly, you know, left brain, is we don't forget enough. We don't forget enough. When a woman is making a decision, I remember dear Shakti beloved making the, you know, deciding she needs a car. Now, what car? Whoa! Overview. My God, what would it be? A pink Rolls Royce, a green Cadillac? What would be the right car for the bikini? You know, and she's challenged to that. So she goes, she gathers the information, she talks to car people, she visits dealerships, she takes test drives. After about 6 months, yeah, she's got a pretty good idea of where she's going. Then she limits it to that, and then she eventually gets the little car. You know, but that process, where a male's weak in that, is that when we work with overview, it's very hard for us to include the relevant stuff to the overview. You
Mm.
know, everything. Some comment we heard about a kind of car from some guy being gentle about it years ago will make it into our overview. It's not relevant. That kind of car's not made. We're not even looking at that. But now we're edgy about looking at Fords because, etc. You know, um, I have, when I exercise my overview, I have to quite consciously just watch out for extraneous stuff I know that's not relevant,
Mm.
because I have
Mm.
that kind of mind that it's very hard for me to ever forget anything. I've been drunk in my life, to real drunk, like Dean Martin says, you're not really drunk if you can lie on the floor without holding on. I've been that,
Yeah.
but I've never slipped a memory from it. My brain hangs on to every little memory, every damn moment, and so when I work with overview, my biggest challenge is limiting what should be included in the overview of this.
Mm. Mm.
And that's you could say an intrinsic weakness of the masculine system when working with it. Um, Overview, this is where if you come across women that have had a career or two, and let's start with the example of a man. I mean, I've done many things in my life. If you put me underground on a mine tomorrow and tell me to drill, drill, and that means instructing the drill workers to drill the holes to blow a face correctly and then pack it with explosives correctly and blow it. The embarrassing thing, in a sense, is I could probably do that job. I might overcharge the holes. I might use too much explosive. I might get some of the angles a little wrong, but it's going to work. Those skills that I learned at 7 years old, they're still in there.
Mm.
But you ask almost any woman that's had a career or two to do something she did 10 years ago, she's lost. She's lost. It's forgotten. She's got some memories of it, yes, sure. But the details, the linearity of the procedures that she used to be very good at, no, it's gone now,
Uh,
you know,
yeah,
because the
yeah,
female mind is very good at loading up. It's designed to be good at loading up what's relevant for the overview now. And then
yeah,
as the situation changes, the overview even governs what's the contents of the overview, what's
yeah,
relevant, what's irrelevant, and so on.
yeah,
And I say, just there in the mechanics of it, the male mind has a difficulty there, typically.
yeah, yeah. I I appreciate that there's something about the situational awareness or that overview capacity that is close to learning or so like the ability to pick up a new skill, but then the
Mm.
skill is like situationally relevant. So then it's not hardening into procedure that then becomes almost the automatic, I guess,
Now, of
or
course, if something gets very strongly into the overview of a woman, say disproportionately, like not in good balance, then you can get the real dark side of overview, the dark side of the feminine. The best study I remember that showed me that, it was a study someone did on feuding cultures, you know, cultures where you're supposed to kill, someone that's in another family for the honor of your family, and so on.
hmm,
And they found out it's the women who keep it going. It's the women rule that. It's your granny showing you when you're a little boy, showing you daddy's shirt or uncle's shirt with the bloodstains and winding you up already, setting you up. Like I say, every man's a mind job of some woman, setting you up, that you're going to go and kill his son, you know,
yeah,
when you're big. And and there's this, I'm not saying it's totally dysfunctional, that thing of feuding, we didn't like it. It was an interesting thing we more or less removed it basically by ending families. You have the nuclear family now, just man, woman, child. So there's
uh,
no real opportunity. And you could say that's a great thing in the world. But, that kind of overview, in some situations, it stopped people from being friendly with tribes that were out to get them,
Mm,
because the old memory was there and it was still included in the overview. But on a
mm.
dysfunctional level, it can become that the old bat gets really vicious in her old age and, you know, sends her little grandsons to go wreak revenge. And it can be quite ugly.
In in the context of teaching and learning, so
Mm,
so the we can make that error if we use like a word like life, like you want to be situationally aware for life. Now that's just too abstract and so the reality of it is that much of life has been mechanized, overtaken, is put into its ruts and and life just goes on in that way. And then there can be uh, discrepancies or habits within that flow that begin to produce a bit of pain or a bit of harm, and then that can give cause for kind of leaving that rut or changing that little pocket of life. In the context of teaching and learning, and now I think we would have to talk about things like character or the person, or we would have to frame some, we would have to give a go at the ultimate, like what's the goal of this? Then the so in your book there was a piece on mind training. I think it was under strategies or um and there's I think it's just a paragraph on practices that uh, it made me realize how much I love this kind of teaching that are have to do with just little modifications or like suggestions or invitations to you have to live it out in your life. That's like a silly one that I did was close my right eye for an hour. And then some things that you can do like I'm going to avoid this word. Um the when I speak to people the one that I've kind of been following it a little bit today, but I think I could do better. I'll try again tomorrow. Just laughing as much as you are allowed to. And and it how it immediately it puts it into an uncontrived into as uncontrived a situation as possible so that your normal mind is functioning as it would function, and then you introduce a bit of difference and you see how it reacts. So with this insistence in me in terms of thinking the pragmatic context, like a teaching and learning design, or how that my mother's in education, so if our minds are made by our moms and women in our life, I think this is why I inherit this this position. So
mm.
I keep coming to think the implicit context, and I can err in terms of just like negating it into life, and then it means almost nothing, and then there's like this oscillation. So I'll hand it back to you there.
Yeah, there you find it, that if your overview goes too far, you end up with a lack of any fire, any spark, any motivation. You start to head in the direction of what I'm describing about the woman who ate at 10 in the morning with the red, I mean 11 in the morning with red wine, It's like if your overview gets too big to the situation, you get a kind of paralysis from it. And then
Mm,
if your overview is insufficient to it, or you discard or ignore your interview, then you plow ahead on some one pointed focus and find out usually it's a horrible fuck up and you've really dug yourself a hole or whatever. It's all in finding the appropriate balance. Mind training is largely good discipline for the linearity. The core features of good mind training tend to be things like one is integrity, as in not trying to look very good to the world. No, integrity is to yourself first and then sure outward. But then again, that your outward can have factors, it, but inwardly, that your thinking your planning, your thinking about a thing is in alignment with your feeling about a thing and is in alignment with your actions in relation to that thing.
Mm.
And putting those three parts together, your thinking, your feeling, your action, or not even putting them together, just looking for where are they together? Where can they be together? Because then you're strong in your one-pointed focus. You're strong with it.
Yeah.
Another one is keeping your agreements. Most
Mm.
societies and secret societies, and I mean, it goes all the way from things like Est in America to it's called Quest, I think, in South Africa more these days. Very good mind training systems out there. But even down to the level of your local little church having a sign up saying Alpha Mind Power Training or something like that. The first lessons of those kinds of practices, one of the key things that really should be in there with good ones is a great discipline around keeping your agreements.
Mm.
Such trainings, they'll set the clock and baby, you 1 minute late arriving for the clock, and the door is locked and there's a sign saying bugger off, like we're not interested in you, that kind of thing, getting a good discipline going with keeping your agreements. Why?
Mm.
Yeah, sure, it makes things nicer for people around you if they can rely on you and you make an effort to keep your agreements and you make an effort to not make agreements when you don't feel you can really give your all to them,
Yeah.
that and when you have the mental flexibility to go, okay, wait, I'm not going to be able to keep that agreement. So you get hold of the person, you say, I need to change it. I can no
Yeah.
longer give my agreement that I said. It's going to have to go another way or whatever. But responsibility with that in training in the exterior, very valuable because not because of the exterior. I couldn't give a shit about that. On the
Mm.
interior, you start to keep your agreements with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's the value of it, that
Yeah.
if you have those qualities, it makes your linearity what Jordan Peterson would call competent.
Yeah.
So when your overview indicates, well, yeah, I need to get a new job, well, your competence lines up for it. You dress for it, you prepare for it, you read a little bit about the company, you try find something that the guy that's interviewing has published or something, so you can quote him to himself when you go in the interview. You're in agreement with yourself
Mm.
and you're integrous. When you go in there, you present with your words, your thoughts, your feelings, congruous altogether to the same purpose.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
That's really the value of mind training, and and keeping, you could say, really core basic principles together. Usually, the simpler the better.
Yeah.
Notions like what is, what isn't. And if you just have that running like a little mantra, then you save yourself from reacting to responding to a whole lot of things that aren't. And it will help you determine what actually is. I mean, if
Yeah.
physicists had a bit of training with that, they wouldn't be in the mess they're in. But yeah.
The honesty, yeah, that personal agreement. I noticed this morning, like um those the when I become deceptive with myself, it's through a little agreement that I've made with myself, but haven't kept. Like
Yeah.
it hasn't come into action. And then it's like, why is that? Why is that agreement being made? And it's because the thing that I made an agreement over, there's some problem, like there's some tension, like there's something there that an agreement will resolve, but I'm not committed to carrying it out. I just want to get that tension away. So then I close it with a little
Right.
agreement, and now I've deceived, or I'm when the more that I do not carry that out into action, the more deceitful I become with myself. And so I'm coming
And the
out
more
of,
you lose trust with yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
scary, that.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. I mean, well, I've got a little story might describe just just to color up, fill in more of this dynamic. One of the teachers of our school, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, beautiful Shakti, when she was coming along into, she was really getting strong and in her teaching, um, and she'd she'd been she realized she'd been teaching women various things, but she realized that that she had now stuff to really teach. It was time to maybe put together a group, invite people that worked at her before and so on, and put together a group and do a week long whatever group training thing. So she put together her program. Her overview says that's what to do. Now's the time to do this group. And she was at that point, very much working with this masculine, feminine overview linearity quality. And as I've hinted to you, first steps in working with that is to really let them separate. You're not creating a separation, you're revealing the separation there is, and you're allowing both of them to come into the game. Sure, integration's the aim, we're going to get there, but at first they felt as two separate things. So she had a clear separation going on. She was really in a feminine when she was doing the plotting and planning and the scheming of what needs to happen. And then she handed it over to her linearity, as in to her masculine, like a conversation between the two. Okay, this is what I want to do. That's what it involves. It involves the advertising it involves the booking the venue, it involves putting together 100 juggles, it involves taking the money. All right, all of that. Are you up for it? And her masculine, oh, I can do it. And she had good, strong, well-developed, well-trained in our culture, masculine, PhD grade masculine, you know.
Mm.
And so, okay, do it. And next couple of weeks, whatever it was, in her activity, in her focus, getting done what she needs to do, all the parts working together, so to speak, in full integrity with it, gets the group together, teaches the group, and the group ends, everyone goes, she locks up the venue and goes and gets in her car and sits down and feels a weird kind of sadness. Wonders what the hell's going on here? And so she looks and she feels, oh, a masculine voice. What does it want to say? It wants to say, was that okay? Because the masculine has no overview. It doesn't even know if it's done well, even when
Yeah.
it's put its heart and soul. It knows it put its heart and soul in, but it doesn't know if it succeeded. And from her overview from her feminine, oh my God, yes, that was not only okay, that was magnificent. That was totally gorgeous. That was exactly what I wanted of you.
Wow.
And feeling that lovingness arising between her linearity that had achieved and her overview that had wanted it and instructed it. And that was really for her the start of those two parts becoming really friendly.
Mm.
And it's not that far from there to what in Tantra is called Mahamudra, or the great union, the great exercise of letting those two become one.
Mm.
That the two sides of yourself fall in love from the reliability they find in each other. The linearity loves being held, guided by the overview. It loves being assessed by the overview. Knowing how did I do?
Mm. Mm.
But that they become that separate in you that the one doesn't know the other. Well, that's the true situation.
Mm.
Normally, it's a fight between us. We quite unconsciously flip into male mode, female mode, and it's nothing to do with being masculine. I mean, everyone's got it if you look for it. I remember one friend of mine. I obviously existence has dished me up friends specifically often enough for my learning. This guy was like the ultimate patriarch. I mean, real honor culture man. Offend him, he will kill you and fuck the consequences and that kind of. Someone who's worked as a mafia enforcer as one of his little day. While he had a perfectly good career because he loves that stuff. you know, monster of a man. I mean, as hairy a male in the pure of masculinity as you can get. Really, we're talking about an all the way monster. But trained as an architect, so having quite an aesthetic, and watch him walk into someone's house, and boy, you see him quite unconsciously go absolutely into his feminine, and you get to see and hear exactly what his mother was like. He'd look and he'd go, oh my God, those drapes with those walls. How could you? How could you? You know, completely in the feminine for those few seconds. What is in that expression? And then moving back. Most of us, we become the one, we become the other. We don't even know what's going on. I mean, a
Yeah.
beautiful example that hit me early on in learning in a lovely group with the gorgeous, gorgeous teacher, Subodhi, working on masculine, feminine aspects, the inner masculine, feminine, on this work. And me and dear wife, at the time we were in this group together, and we were having fights at the time and some conflictuals. And so in the middle of her group, in one exercise, when you're supposed to, share some stuff back and forth between you, we went into nasty, nasty. We were viciously attacking each other using our whole skill set we'd been gathering brutally, We were being vicious with each other. Bang, 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 and hurt as well. Oh God, so hurt, so angry, and so vicious. And she just like everyone else went quiet in the room while this was on. And she came over to us and she just put her hand on each of our shoulders. And then she oh so sweetly repeated the last sort of 5 or 6 exchanges between us. And she repeated them, adding in just, she came from her masculine with this accusation about what your masculine's been doing. Your masculine didn't want to face it. So it bugs out and it leaves the poor feminine to take the hit. The feminine feels wounded and stuff. So then you came back with, oh my God, but I'm so hurt and you're so brutal and blah, blah, blah. And then at that point, her masculine's not up for facing that accusation. So the feminine's there and receives it and reacts to it. And the feminine response is, oh, you think you're bad. You've been the real aggressor. And she repeated our lines back to us, just contextualizing it for us is, that was your masculine voice. That was your feminine voice. That was your feminine voice. That was your feminine voice. That was your masculine voice. Because now, of course, the feminine's feeling threatened, so the masculine comes in to rescue the feminine and gathers itself and attacks back. And it was just so crystal clear, just our interaction broken down that way. And just her sitting us back and saying, okay, now pay attention to what's just happened here. And paying attention and feeling the truth of what she was pointing out. Absolutely. Wow. So clear and so solid. And that was a start for me of catching on to, oh, here's my feminine. Oh, here's my masculine. Like still on the way to what I described later with Shakti, have them so separate, so clear, both present that they can have a conversation. I wasn't quite there yet at that point, but catching on to being automatically in the one and the other. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Grab a tissue.
George.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Back.
that was very moving. That story of the reconciliation that Shakti experienced. That like and the
Oh, oh, that's why I need the tissue just now. It makes, I get a little bit of, that story still touches me. It was, and oh, I
yeah,
loved it when she told me that. That was,
yeah.
just as a teacher, knowing, oh, I reached that. Mwah, we're really going somewhere now.
Mm,
Really going somewhere.
mm, sure,
Yeah.
sure. That and the I think what um what most got me there was the that recognition that that the recognizing and
Yeah.
the there's a piece here about um there's we're identifying in some way this overview with the relationality or relatedness, and that goes into a situation. It's like a situational. It's a highly complex skill to determine what is relevant in the situation.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Like I said, that is the big challenge for the male brain doing this. Wow, it's hard.
yeah,
What to include in the overview? Because it's not that everything should be included. Even having overview, there's a high quality in overview when you're making good decisions about what to include or exclude from the overview
mm,
on a thing.
mm.
That's you could say that's not just getting it right. That's getting refined. That's
Could you say
for me those in the
yeah,
world who do the overview exceedingly well.
mm,
Yeah, they have that quality.
that quality? Can you repeat that?
Well, that quality of they know where to get the information they want. They
Yeah,
run around and get it,
yeah,
and then use it, and then they drop it.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, it's impressive. Yeah.
Sure, sure. That's I think this piece of the recognition is recurring for me because um this but maybe two contexts. In the teacher-student relationship, it's often um there's that can often be what is sought. So I've heard it said that there's often this repeating or the bringing up of the dynamics that one learns with one's parents, so like the relationship with your father or with your mother. But the basic desire is the seeking someone who would recognize you. And then so you're teaching uh I don't know quite how to like recognize you finally, or um it's a safe place, or it's a maybe not the right words. It's a containing relationship that I can pour out into, and then looking in the world for that. But it might not be so uh black and white, and then especially in the context of introducing this recognizing the friend grew as friend, or teaching form as becoming friendship, and it really like really getting into that, then it is like it comes down to these like smaller relational moments of just of simple like of recognition, and that energizes. There's a feeling of there's a settledness comes. There's that release of the tension of wanting to know if I've done well, if I'm worthy, if I'm accepted. Release that energy, and now you can go forth into the next thing. So like a lot on that view, a lot of the or a way to kind of frame the it's this kind of secret power that this is how I heard it said by one preacher. The one thing that we have against one another is the ability to excommunicate in some way or to exclude. Like the one private power that we all have and can exercise at all times, and devastating. This and the degree to which life becomes like a playground dynamics of including, excluding, and the in the context of the power and of the uh, power in the feminine and in the overview, and to like differentiate it, but not simply female, but I think also acknowledging the role of women in terms of that which they recognize in a man and draw forth. Like the what you are recognizing for is what then the male is going to be selecting for. And so it's a yeah. So That, yeah. Thank you for hearing me there, because I wanted, I needed to come back to that moment, like that moment of, and for Shakti it was that uh, uh, an internal relation, an internal relatedness, um, which is the it also brought my thoughts away from the implicit thinking, the design of the implicit structure, or the implicit learning space, how to create that, and more into uh, relationality as being the the heart, the heart of it. Like how do you relate? And you need to figure out what's being related and that they are in relationship. Yeah,
Yeah.
hand it over to anything.
Yeah. Like, how to say, for me, there was a very distinct part of that evolution in me of really just getting into and refining my masculine power. Um, I remember taking a job with, I'd worked in the movie industry and I'd had freedom and air and everything. And now, oh, I was getting into the new computer thing back when desktop publishing was something brand new. I was the whiz kid, you know. I was one of the first users of Photoshop before there was Photoshop, things called digital darkroom and stuff like that. Um, and when I signed on with that company, the way I made myself happy with it because I had all sorts of resistances to serving a corporate interest, especially that particular one, a corporation that's there to glorify all the other corporations, graphic design company. And the attitude I took was, okay, I like the Japanese framing of the masculine, and okay, I am going into service of this, as in I'm selling my sword, I'm the warrior, I'm signing on, I'm taking their shilling, so to speak, right? And that for me was a great freedom for my masculine, that in terms of what I do for this employer, it's not at all my responsibility. It's all on their overview. I'm serving that. I'm not even looking at making judgments about the quality of that. And hey, I'm an argumentative bastard. I'm going to push it against it if I think it's going wrong. But I'm serving that. If I argue with it, I'm serving it. I'm trying to improve it. You
Mm,
know, that's a difficult
mm.
thing for an employer to understand. When I'm critical of the thing, it's because I love it and I would like to see it improve.
Yeah, yeah.
But for those years, I served them. I did what I was the business warrior for them. And it really was good for me in terms of really refining the edges of my masculine capabilities, my ability to make an agreement, keep the agreement, you know, serve in that way.
Mm,
And it was useful also to do that with my wife. I took the attitude of Japanese husband, you know, you the warrior, you go make the salary.
mm,
Are you about money? No. Oh, no, not at all. That goes to the wife. She knows what it must be spent on. What do I want? Well, enough in my pocket for, you know, I don't know, my cigarettes and a beer or two after work. That's about it. You know, enough to make a couple of bets in the office and pay if I lose. You know, that I need a little carry cash. That's all I need. And advancing like that, even to the level of leaving the overview with her, I never decided, okay, I think they should pay me more. No, if I was thinking about what's my relationship with them and their valuation of me, and that would really fuck with my linearity, which I was serving them with.
mm.
But wife had that overview. And so she would tell me once a year, time to look for another job. And I go, okay, am I going to change job? No, 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 no. Just time to look for another one and get another offer. And so every year, while I worked with them, much to their frustration, every year, well, I was in a growing field. I was more valuable year by year myself in
Mm.
terms of that corporate zone. Even um, and every year I would walk into them and say, "Look, someone's offered me double the money." Because she would say at some point, "Okay, now you've got the offer. Now go get your salary raised." And hey, if they won't raise it, leave it and take the job. And I'd walk in and I'd say, "Someone's offered me double the money." They would every year say, is it just about the money? And I said, well, sure, it's just about the money. And then they'll say, well, okay, we'll match it. And every year I said, well, great. And went back, and wife was happy. And, often there was something in the deal like a nice new office chair for me or something of that sort, um, or a better computer at home or whatever that goes with the new salary now. And I did that to them year after year after year after year, every year. But I didn't set a schedule of it and so on.
Mm.
I mean, what my own overview has developed since then. I'm going, oh my God, that was so slack, so slack. That was not how the discussion should have gone. I should have said, well, you're willing to pay me double what you've been paying me. That means you've been undervaluing me and underpaying me. For how long have you been undervaluing me? How much? And let's square with that before we continue this discussion. How about that? That's what I would have taken to them now with,
Yeah.
But they had enough. They had enough trouble with me. Years after I left, I had a cup of coffee with one of the ex-directors of it by then, that had been one of the directors when I was working there. And it came around in the conversation, and I said, "Yeah, I know you guys didn't like me. I know you needed what I did, but you didn't like me. I was never a corporate fit." And he said, "God, dude, you have no idea." I said,
Yeah.
now you've got to explain. He said, I don't think we ever, from the day you joined till the day you left, we never had a board meeting that a main point of discussion was, how do we get rid of this bugger? And we always ended up with the same conclusion, oh shit, but we need him.
Yeah, that's quite a fire. That's like a to exist in that kind of relational space because yeah, sure. There's
And that's where the journey is so individual, because that's how they felt about me. Meanwhile, how I felt about them, I'm out there screwing our poor Macintosh dealer down to bones level prices that he's making nothing by the time we buy it, because now we got this gear for like two-thirds the price. And I'm full of pride in my one point of focus warrior, and they hate me because I'm not doing the right corporate way, where I should go to a bigger supplier, do a more involving deal to get deeper and better support from them. I was making myself essential because I was the support, right?
Mm.
But do a bigger deal with a bigger company with better support and everything else, and take a kickback. Build the business relationship is how they thought of it in terms of those terms. But that's overview in hindsight, seeing that now. But I pissed them off immensely by serving them whether they liked it or not,
Mm.
getting them the best deal whether they were insisting on it or not.
You there's an interesting turn of phrase. The ju judgment of the quality of that. The so you're talking about the what you ignored in that phase of life. That you didn't make the judgments of the quality of the whole context, the
I
situation,
just
the
went
relationship.
with my linear. I went with my linear.
And
My,
and
my, 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 my linear was more comfortable with Shakti's linear. Sure, I went through the things of did I do good, etc., etc. But actually, I didn't even go there because it's into overview. I couldn't care.
yeah.
When my linear was getting its strength, you know, how to say, you have to go well enough into your linear sides that they become the whole of you, so to speak. That they really become dominant. Like I say, a feminine, the woman is not going to get anywhere with her overview if she hasn't first expanded it out to where it all goes utterly meaningless and pointless.
Yeah.
If she hasn't felt that extent, then where's the motivation to contain it, or the ability even?
Mm, mm,
And if she can't reach out to the full extent, well, then when overview demands the including of things that are a bit of a stretch, she can't do it. It has to have reached that at some point in the learning for it to be available. You
mm,
have to have available extents, but you don't live out to them all the time. No.
Yeah. Pointless. That's a lovely punny.
I,
It's good. Good. Pointless. Because
a
it
lot
could.
of a lot of people, so a lot of people at a kind of monastic spiritual community kind of level of learning, intensity of learning, which is a grade or two below the tantrikas, at that kind of level, it makes sense for a guy to say, well, I know I'm so much in my masculine, etc., etc. No, let me try and be more in the feminine, or let me reduce, take an attitude of reducing the masculine energies a bit to discover more what's my feminine doing and so on. Yeah, at a certain level that can work. At the tantric kind of level, the intensity we tend to run at, no, no. When you're feeling and you're in the masculine, you're in an environment to use, yeah, be it 100%.
Mm.
Don't hold back. Because if you ideally want the fullness of the full power of both, then put them together.
Ah,
If you've got a
yeah.
weak overview and a shabby, disorganized, integrous masculine, how are those two ever supposed to find a friendliness and eventually become lovers? They're not going to do it.
Mm. Mm.
Not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. You need to
You
become aware that there is an opposition and then make the opposition dynamic. And there
right.
needs to be something there. There was
At
a
first, most
yeah.
people it's hit the wall. At first, most people it becomes quite. In fact, I'm going to use Shakti as an example again, just because she was so crystal clear with her movement. She was. This was now before that point where masculine and feminine met, and there started to be the friendliness. Yeah. Um, it was where she felt her masculine, she felt her feminine. She was never quite 11 o'clock in bed with, but that stage of her, that retirement from life attitude, in a way. Um, and she said to me once when I visited her, she was very weepy and so on. No, my students don't get me anymore. They can't see me. And I go, darling, what's happening? She's saying, well, I'm just getting feedback from them all the time. Like, you're just so magnificent and so centered and so solid and so reliable, so contained, so angelic, all that kind of stuff they're saying. And I say, yeah, and the trouble with that? Shit, that they're missing me entirely. They have no fucking idea. I am tearing myself apart. I have masculine, feminine, and weapons out in max combat. So much of the time, it's a war in here. Blissful my ass. Jeez, shit, it's a war. It's ugly as fuck what's going on. And all bad language and expletives mine. That's just to give the feeling. She was too elegant for that. and and I said, but now let me break down what's happening for you here. Yes, it's beautiful. So what's happening is that war that we all have of the masculine and feminine, you have taken it on in you, and it's on. Good. What that means is energy that used to be there to attract some man, to project the male stuff on him, to have the war with him, doesn't happen. You're having it, the war in here. So this is the essence of functional Stoicism. Stoicism not as repression. Stoicism as self-responsibility. Very different thing.
Mm.
I said, because you are having the war happening in you, you are not projecting the war out there. Yes, that looks blissful. Yes, that looks integrous. Yes, that looks like your peace. Yes, it's gorgeous. They're not missing you. They're not missing you. You are that in how you are appearing. And then she had to face a little bit of a wobble over her own attractions to several teachers because of their grace, because of their, and realizing, oh, so that's what was really going on for them. I saw that grace because all the ugliness is conscious, present, and in action inside.
Mm. Sure, sure.
And very often you see, especially at the beginning of a teaching, someone really, because Western teachers typically, there's a big thing of being really premature with it, like while you're on your journey, you're teaching. Yeah.
Mm.
And so often that quality applies. But it's a good thing in a teacher who's doing that, who's doing what she was doing, taking self-responsibility for that war, not needing to make friendships to have the war with a friend, not needing to put it into every external relating. If you look, the usual way we have that battle is by projecting it on others and then fighting with them.
Make friendship in order to have a war with the friend. Yeah, true.
So have you done that?
It's a thank you for the inclusion of that, the warring imagery again. It came in the beginning with the
Oh,
military, like the general and the foot soldier and the
it's an area to see it. General holds command. It's not because the general's better at killing someone. No, the general's better at making sure everyone's going to have soup tonight.
where do you like
The general's the mama. I mean, the
yeah.
general's the mama. And you look again at the dynamic of how it works. When you have a commander, someone like, say, in history, look up a guy called Smedley Butler. When you have a man that operates well with overview, he's got good feminine, he's got good overview, and he uses it,
Mm,
then, oh boy, those soldiers love him.
yeah.
Love him. They know if he tells them to go and do something with 3/4 of my head, they know it's worthwhile. And they do it running with the enthusiasm of the first moment of a rugby charge. You know,
Mm,
they love it. Us masculine loves running with a strong overview.
yeah. Yeah.
When it feels it can trust it, and it's directed me well before. Oh baby, I'll take your direction again.
So maybe how do we um we have these two. We have the army and then the internal war. So in the army,
Yeah.
there's the dynamic between the general and the foot soldier, and there's the relation
Mm.
between them. But that army itself is fighting other armies' bodies. They're conquering, getting new.
You could say it's doing what armies do. Sometimes it's operating like the nation's immune system.
Mm, ah, yeah,
Sometimes it's
yeah.
operating like a predator. It's getting what it needs to eat.
So this internalization of the war,
Mm.
where how do you and I'm happy for the analogy to break down, but like how's it uh what are the pieces?
Well,
Yeah.
for, for me, where the analogy breaks down is the context of being to environment. And the war I'm talking about is the two sides of masculine and feminine and their argument. And I'm saying where it connects to environment is very often, and especially when we're not conscious of this, we're not conscious of our masculine, conscious when we're in our masculine, when we're in our feminine, we're not conscious of them. And we certainly don't have the two present as like two continual voices within us, right?
Mm,
Then to have the argument, right? We get together with a woman or whatever, we project on them our feminine, and the argument that we have internally with our feminine, we have it with them
mm,
externally.
mm.
You know
Yeah.
that's and so this is what I was saying about when Shakti came to the point where his students were all going, oh, "You just become the goddess,"
Ah,
was when she wasn't doing her wars, her argumentations outwardly. That it's truly an inward argument,
yeah.
but now she's taken self-responsibility for it, and it was
Ah,
happening in her. She
beautiful.
also had the
Yeah.
awareness of it. She knew, it's her masculine voice bugging her in the moment,
Yeah.
or her feminine voice having a clash or disagreement, her overview colliding. She's on with her linearity and not going well. She had self-awareness to the point she knew that. So it's when you know that and feel that, then the arguments, of course, automatically inside. Dude, why would you want to try and have an argument with George? It's right here, you know. And
Yeah.
I mean, Stoicism is a greatly underrated thing around the spiritual world in the modern times. And of course, Stoicism, like my father had two distinct stages of life. In the first distinct stage of life, he looked stoic, more stoic in the first stage, but it was repressive stoic.
Mm.
It's uh, keeping my cool by not taking stuff on, or by
Yeah.
not engaging with it, or and getting through the situation by all the things that have been triggered that I've got to feel. Put them all away for later with a real proper effort, and present as the good gentleman, right? And then of course, real stoicism is keeping that same exterior. It looks exactly the same, but what's triggered is, oh my God, I'm feeling every little bit of it.
Oh wow.
But
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Like,
yeah.
that's
That
functional stoicism.
an image that came to mind for that is just like this like the preciousness of a tear. Like
Mm.
when because otherwise like when I'm crying, like my face is contorting and like I'm visibly, you can see the struggle in me. And then there's also those moments where that intensity, the secretion is just a tear. And like but the reality of what's going on contained. Yeah.
Mm. That
That's a bit,
feelings moving. Yeah. Because the one is feelings wanting to move, and there's more about it. There's a great resistance to it. So there's a bunching up with it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I think,
Usually what happens there is your masculine's beating up on your feminine or vice versa. You can see us males, we're set up to have, in a way, less tolerance for that fight, in a way. And it's reflected right into our physicality. You go into the brain connections between the hemispheres, which is, of course, where that argument has to be carried. Women are set up on automatically born and automatically issued a whole lot extra connection, a whole lot more than we have.
mm,
We can develop ours. Brains are plastic, if you get more fluidity between the two, there's literally more nerves growing, and the nerves between are reinforcing and getting higher bandwidth. They're all getting upgrades if you use this. and
mm,
and so the masculine can very integrated. I mean, I say we can become as good in the game as Serena Williams can become in the game of tennis.
yeah,
We can become that good at the game of holding overview. But we're born with a limitation. We
yeah,
have to grow our connections between the two. Whereas a woman automatically has, she's just issued more. She comes
yeah,
with more connection. Also means in a culture like the modern culture where the general people aren't, the general population doesn't mature, right? The women are going to look more psychologically troubled very often because they have enough crosstalk that this argument's going to be happening in them. They're going to have more conflict because they've got more connection.
mm,
Whereas males, easier time having them separate. Yeah, we'll slip in our feminine every now and again, quite unconsciously, not notice it, back to our masculine. And the likelihood of coming into conflict in the average dude is pretty low. It's not going to be a major problem for him. He's not the general run of the mill guy is not going to be an issue because the two sides are separate. Um, in fact, I forget, I think there was quite recently some research I saw um, where they'd gone into analyzing, the kind of the body that connects the hemispheres. And to their surprise, they saw that it seems to be more about suppressing the communication between the hemispheres than
Uh,
facilitating it. They thought it was there to enable. And it kind of is for both. What they're seeing in the average person they're studying is that it's about keeping them nicely separate, actually, more. you know, which it fits with what I say about, the maturity levels of modern humanity. Um, the process of integrating masculine and feminine, that's a post maturity situation usually, like caught up to date with all the childhood traumas have now been triggered and felt because one followed the desires, but now you've got other levels of integration to work on, integrating your masculine and feminine being a huge one.
yeah,
you know
yeah,
I mean, uh, from Gospel of Thomas, unless you make the inner as the outer, the masculine, the man as the woman, unless you make the man as the woman, the inner, the outer, the above as the below, you know, you have to do that,
mm, mm,
you know, later on, higher aspect, lower aspect. How do you find the integration of them? But the masculine, feminine one, yeah, it's huge. And it's a very, very core one.
yeah,
And it's also one that if you get that right, if you get that right, the other integrations you have to do become so much easier.
mm, mm,
Because you felt already the thing of being distinctly two and then becoming one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. That's. I think I'm out of questions. I feel that what's the. Oh no, not true. The question. The um. Oh, just a curiosity, so as well, just a simple question. Are you thinking of and working with uh I think his name is Ian McGilchrist, the master in his emissary. Are you familiar with that work or?
yeah, and it rings a definite bell. How do they say? I forget who it was who said, I cannot remember half the books I've written, I've read, but
Yeah.
like I can't remember half the meals I've eaten, but they have made me. He's in there somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just the yeah master in the emissary, the hemispheres. Um. So I was just curious. Maybe should we could we have a go at I need to be off at 3. A go at again at this insistence in me of this the now I need to try and ask it in a way that's uh, generative because this it surprised me for I would find myself in a situation often where the manner that I enacted in a relational situ was clued onto by the woman in the situation. And so I received recognition from them, usually afterwards. And but it just wasn't like it wasn't it didn't register for most of the men the relevance of what happened. And
Mm.
that was an oddity. I kind of began to um notice. The specific one that I'm thinking about was a group of ladies learning yoga. Okay, I'm not sure how that's going to connect with the phrase that you use, the quality of judgment or the judgment of quality. It's when judgment has this emphasis on and maybe it's just my own tendency, but I'm thinking about it in very linear terms.
Mm.
But the now it's that phrase being put into like the and this is why I noted the turn of phrase, because then we have to go towards that quality, like the quality because we can't quantify all the relevant relational dynamics and what it means. So then the judgment is of a different nature. It's an assessment of uh, quality, and we've come to quality of relation. So quality of that seems to be very important there. Um, how is it, and okay, then recognizing a culture where this is not um, nurtured, and it's actively excluded, or the incentive structures against it, this quality of being in a relational, sensitive way. It's at the home, but even the homes are struggling. The How do we think the cultivation of this? So it's the question of education, of pedagogy. Um, I'm trying not to ask it in a way that it's like it's reductive, or because like this really is a big question for me. It like really is something that I keep coming to, and I'm really interested in. And so I think I've kind of gestured enough that it's a real uh thought or tension for me, but it's this. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, the creating because we have to acknowledge the responsibility of the creation of the implicit structure or context. We're involved in that, especially then if you take up teaching. So what is that, or or how? What is the containing?
Hmm. Yeah, if I'm following your sort of after what is this fact in the context of really you and you could say culture, you and teaching in a general or open kind of way. Um, that's a zone where I prefer to leave it to the feminine overview. What do people need to encounter? What's the best thing? That there's rich complexities in there that I'd have to make an effort and stretch strongly into my feminine to get involved with in a way. Um, the way I work with it is I'm even when I'm working with a group, I keep groups down to like a dozen, max 20 kind of thing. My one expression is I like to know everyone's name by the end of the thing, you know. Well, so we're just catching a huge wicket. Um, I'm working always with individuals. Now, a dozen individuals I can work with, maybe 20 at a stretch. I can't work 30 individuals in a room time. And in terms of bigger than that, uh, how to say, in terms of my overview, I keep it fairly tight to the berserkers, those who learn best in their individual encounter, that, they're really feeling the world as them and the whole of existence, not them contained within their school, contained within their culture, contained within their country, you know. And I mean, as I say, plenty of people need to move like that. That's why spiritual communities and communes and things exist. Great, good stuff to explore. But some, their energy goes beyond that. And those tend to be the ones I work with. And that also is, one reason I'm happy to talk to you and I'm nervous about podcasts in general is, for me, I know there's a very definite line of scale. Like, my teaching, and in terms of me and the world around me, I'm not here to disturb or upset and so on. Certainly for me, the people I work with closely, them having good overview is important. Them being able to make good discernment from that overview is important. But messing with, how to say, it's like uh, the ethics of the grifter, of the scammer, the con artist must apply. It said in those circles, you don't get in the way of another man's meal. You know, if you see someone pulling over the wool over someone's eyes and emptying their pockets of some cash, you shut up, because that's how they feed themselves. That's their living, you know? Like, I'm not saying I'm 100% with that as a principle or anything, but just having that sort of in mind about the culture. For example, with the whole Corona thing that went down, you know, it was clear as day to me. I even did my discernment. The way I make a discernment is this thing a bullshit or for real. I just look at one or two things that I know would be facts if it was real. Then I go look them up. And then I find if those are not facts, you know, like one of the ones I used with that was, um, well, if we're really getting hit with something bad, the big boys and the big business players, the big mine owners and that, they know the truth. They know much more of the truth than I would get to near to knowing. So all I have to do is look at what are they doing as measures. And I went and looked up what are the big mining houses doing in South Africa. Well, the little relics of them they've left since they already got the gold and left. But you know, the relics they leave here, what were they doing? Well, and worldwide, of course, they still have mines. What they were doing was, if you read through all the bullshit, and I'm very good at reading through corporate bullshit and working out, you know, what they're actually saying here, they were limiting site visits by executives, right? They're presiding over the most dangerous, filthy, dirty, infectious, bug growing environment on earth. You know, a mine is not a sewer. A sewer, stuff flows through it. A mine is a cesspool. It all stays in the same hole all the time and festers as much as it likes.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked underground my first year out of school. I know that environment well. The cholera levels are insane. Stuff like that. You know, you think going to India is dangerous. No, 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 no. The culture that doesn't use alcohol and has mucus dysentery in the air, it's dangerous. But go down one of our mines, oh my God, you know?
Yeah.
And so I knew if a deadly disease is heading our way, the first thing you'll do is the most filthy environments we have, the most infectious, filthy environments we have, my God, would you shut them quick? You'd absolutely 100% stop that shit immediately, whatever it costs, you know? And I saw, oh, they're limiting site visits. Okay, that tells me the true level of danger going on, or at least the level of danger that the top boys who should have the most information, you know, what they know of the situation. That tells me.
Mm.
So data points like that. But now, for me back then, it's not to just not to mess with, you know, the certain companies involved whose names we might be able to remember. I think one begins with a P and another one begins with an M. Anyway, whatever. But they've got their scam on. They're pulling a mugging. I mean, back when I was still on Twitter, I remember I tweeted a couple of times, please get vaccinated. Please, please. Don't give them a hard time. You know, when you're being mugged, mid-mugging, you know, it's dangerous to argue. Just hand over your wallet. Just shut the fuck up and hand over your wallet. You know, like it's mid-mugging. Like if you resist this and they don't make the kind of money they want to make, you don't want to see what they're going to cook up next, you know? Because I'd done a little research. I found this wasn't the first time that you'd had a deliberate release of coronavirus into the population. Not many
Yeah.
people would generally be aware of it, but the first time was 1966. I was 4 years old when they started this shit. And that was international, you know, infect people that are going on an air flight and then work out, follow the infections on the other end. They were experimenting with us with this. And now it's just the scale of it's just grown up. It's just the latest thing. You know, for me, if no one has an overview enough to go look and see the history of this thing we're dealing with, well, then they're only reacting to it now and they think it's brand new and so on. And, you know, humanity's level of maturity, and I mean, you know, it's been a few thousand years of really domesticating humanity. And one has to admit that the average person isn't capable of, it's not about critical thought, they're not capable of processing information on more than a quantity level. It's what goes in the eyes and ears the most that is the biggest weight in the thinking.
Mm.
And it's a perfectly natural level of functioning. I mean, humans can function at a whole level above that. They can hear one person and the whole world disagreeing and listen to that one person and go, but wait a moment, what he's saying actually makes sense. They're capable of that. But that's a fraction of humanity that's capable of that. And so I don't make the anecdote mistake. In terms of interface with the culture and teaching, no, I'm not interfacing with the culture with my teaching. Not at all.
Mm.
And I recommend generally, whatever you're teaching, always, you're not teaching the culture. You're teaching Joe or Jane.
Mm.
Look at Jane. Look at Joe. Deal with Joe. Deal with Jane. Help them, you know?
Yeah.
And helping them doesn't consist in making them alarmed about stuff that they go and try alarm and wake up all humanity to all do the revolution. Sorry, it's never happened, you know? The people, I mean, domesticated humanity is certainly not capable of that. It's not capable of even the kind of stuff we used to do. I mean, what my favorite example of it is tax riots. 1890 to 1990. Let's see the difference. 1890, I believe California, both times. So California had tax riots in 1890. What that meant was that the annoyed population got out in the street, went to the tax offices, pulled the little nibbage functionaries out of the offices, dragged them into the street, put ropes around their necks, and strung them up from the lamp poles. That was a tax riot. So then they had tax protests, tax riots in 1990. And what did they do? Well, they went out with their signs and they walked together and they sang songs in solidarity and they played pushy shovey with the police a little bit. And then they all went out to dinner and they felt well expressed. And what's changed from 1990 to now? Well, now they'll first apply for a permit for their protest before they go protest. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you think of it from a management perspective, humanity is easier and easier and easier to manage.
Mm.
And for humanity, that's not a bad thing. If humanity eventually gets easy enough to manage, maybe we'll see an improvement in the quality of the management. You know? But while humanity is just difficult to manage, well, just holding basic control becomes the point of management. And it's going to be ugly.
Mm. Yeah.
And I'm really not here to mess with that. I'm here for those who individuate from that zone of concern, you could say, is more to the point. So,
Yeah.
from my perspective, the culture, teaching in general in the culture, the way of friendliness has arisen, it's there. Nobody has to suggest it or impose it. Anyone still teaching in an old master orders way is not going to be a strong teacher because people don't really like that anymore. You know, they don't feel held by that anymore. You know, they don't feel met. they a friendly approach of the friendly way is better. And it's not like friendly way is weak.
Mm.
Master gives
Yeah.
orders. Yes, that gives me some leverage if I'm your teacher. But friend's got leverage, dude.
Mm.
You know, friend's got every bit as much leverage. In fact, even better, even closer, even more ultimate leverage than any master giving orders can have.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad deal for teachers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
I really appreciate that answer, especially considering the remorse of the question that it was. It's yeah,
For me, I found a theme. Yeah.
most of it
Anyway, enough for today.
sure. Yeah. I thank you again for your time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it continues to be
And you feel more of these. I'm
It conked out there in the last thing, but I'm assuming you said more of these questions.
No, I'm saying if you feel more, if you want to do more of these get together things on the Zoom, I'm happy.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, of course, if you ever visit the Cape, come do something here in person. Yeah.
Right. Right. Thank you, Swami.
Anyway, good to talk, Daniel. Yeah.